Welcome to Elementary Algebra. The book is by Harold Jacobs. I'm your presenter, Molly Crocker. This course is for use with Elementary Algebra by Harold Jacobs. There are two editions that are available. The 1979 edition can still be found on eBay or Amazon. The used book market is the only source for the 1979 edition, and those are only available as the used book market has them. The current edition, published by Master Books, is only sold in softcover form. It will only last you for a year. What's the difference? Some illustrations that had fallen out of copyright contract were updated for the current edition. The exercises are identical with very few exceptions. Why the Jacobs text? Math teachers, like everyone else, really hate change, even though mathematicians developed a symbol for change. Teachers of any subject tend to teach the way they learned. It's not often when a new way of doing something comes along and really convinces us that this is a better way to do it. But such was the case when I encountered the high school math textbooks by Harold Jacobs. I was a substitute teacher when I first saw his geometry book, and I was frankly smitten by its presentation. It was a few more years before I began working with homeschoolers. The internet was pretty new, which really dates me. Finding a textbook meant we had to go to a bookstore and hope there were some representative copies of all the textbooks out there, and then somehow we had to pick the best one. Schools could order a sample copy from publishers because they would buy enough copies to cover the cost of that examination copy. Homeschoolers did not have that option. No wonder we tend to gravitate toward what we already know. Looking for something new is hard work. It was a student who brought me the Jacobs textbook and wanted to be tutored through it. I didn't know there was an algebra book by Harold Jacobs. There were illustrations and comics showing that the author didn't take himself or mathematics too seriously. Every lesson had a "why do I want to learn this?" problem at the very beginning, or "who uses this stuff?" Perhaps the most important thing is that the book made me a better instructor. As I worked through problems with students, dots got connected in my thinking. Clearly, this author was more interested in fitting students' thinking into a picture bigger than either algebra or geometry. Most texts are simply concerned with conveying skills necessary to get to the next level. As an instructor, my own skills were firming up, as well as the confidence I wanted my students to have. I've handed this book to some homeschooling colleagues, some of whom wanted to use other texts with which they were familiar because, well, they knew them and they didn't like change. Every one of them came back to me after a year and said, "This is the one." At first, I was put off by the path that Harold Jacobs picked through algebra. Up till then, most algebra texts tended to flip back and forth between linear equations of degree 1, meaning you didn't see very many exponents, and polynomial expressions and functions with lots of exponents. Harold Jacobs stuck with expressions and equations of degree 1 before doing much with higher degree polynomials. I think this honors the cognitive maturity that many students are going through at this point. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Harold Jacobs was prescient, meaning he saw the future. Electronic graphing tools were available in 1979, but they weren't in the hands of students as they were doing their homework. Nevertheless, I think Harold Jacobs saw the graphing calculator coming. The book uses applications in tables and graphing more than other algebra texts typically did. The graphing calculator has most definitely changed what and how we teach mathematics, that likely tipped a lot of older textbooks into obscurity. I find it quite easy to show students how to use a graphing calculator to assist with their homework, and so I have incorporated it into these presentations. It definitely makes homework go faster. I have no problem with that. It has not seemed at all to affect the understanding of students about how mathematics works. Students with homework finished are happier students. By all means, use the calculator. The Jacobs text, with or without calculating tools, is a very good preface to college-level algebra and mathematics, where nearly everything is now done from a graphical viewpoint. I spent 17 years at a local community college teaching pre-calculus mathematics. Those courses cannot be done without a graphing calculator. Finally, these exercises are well thought out and are meant to develop mathematical sense. You cannot assign just the evens or just the odds. There is a progression through the problems that students need to follow, leading to better understanding. Yes, the homework exercises teach. There is an aha moment in nearly every lesson if you and your students are watching for them. I will sometimes highlight those. You instructors who are using this book for the first time should do those homework exercises with the students to see if you can find them. I find more of them every time I teach this text. Let's have a closer look at what's available for each version of the text. If it was published with the 1979 edition, then everything for that edition had an Escher print with lizards on the front. There are 3 pieces that you can find. First, the textbook, which had 4 sets of problems for each lesson. More on that in a moment. The teacher's guide contained some suggestions for teaching and also the Set 1 and Set 3 answers. The test bank had 4 versions of the test for each chapter. It also had some other supplementary materials to give some more practice on difficult problems such as rate, time, distance problems. There was a book for making transparencies for the overhead projector with roughly the same cover as the Test Masters, but I have not seen that on either eBay or Amazon recently. The transparencies are referenced in the teacher's guide and are meant to help set up lessons. I have included pieces of them in my presentations. Because some of the illustrations changed, there are a few differences in some of the problem sets. The Set 1 answers and a test bank are in the teacher guide. The current edition does not contain the Set 3 problems. Those are in a separate publication for download only, along with some additional versions of the chapter tests. If you are a small group teacher for homeschoolers and you are using the current edition, I recommend you acquire this. What's in the book? Well, I'm going to pause here and let you pause the video and read this set. What's in the book? This is a lesson by lesson breakdown. Again, I'm going to let you pause the video and read this slide before moving on. So, you want to try to do algebra with my support videos. If you are a student working independently, what else do you need to accomplish this course? You will need a copy of the textbook, either edition. You will need a good guide. This is a person who can answer your questions and who speaks the language of algebra. If you have seen algebra before and just don't remember it, then this person may be optional. I have heard of students who taught themselves algebra, but in 17 years of teaching at the local community college, I have never met one. I met some students who made it about halfway through a first-year algebra course, but not much farther than that. I met lots of homeschoolers who got partway through algebra and decided they were no good at math. It isn't generally true. These people often did just fine when they had a good guide. Algebra is a language, and it really helps to have a good guide. I'm not sure that my video presentations will be enough for the average 9th grade student. It may be sufficient for an older student who is reviewing this material. I am a firm believer in a warm body instructor who will be available when you need them and can ask that question, where did you get lost? It might be a parent, it might be an aunt or uncle, it might be a math teacher who's retired that you know. You will need the answers to the Set 1 exercises. For either edition, they are available in the current edition's teacher guide. Some of the material that I use in my presentations is pulled from the suggestions in the 1979 edition. If you find you want to use the Set 3 problems from the 1979 edition for additional practice, then the answers are available in that teaching manual. If you are using the current edition, then the Set 3 problems and answers are a $10 download from Master Books. Chapter tests, if you wish to use them. It is possible to use the chapter review Sets 1 as the chapter test, which is fine if you are simply reviewing algebra. You can do the Set 2 with the answers in the back of the book for review, and then you can do the Set 1s as the chapter test. If you are using the 1979 edition, then you may want to purchase the test bank for that, available on eBay. Answers are in that book. The teaching manual for the current edition also has one set of tests and answers. The tests for the 1979 edition and the current edition are identical. For my presentation of the course, you will need a graphing calculator. The TI-83 and TI-84, any species, silver, gray, black, plus, can be found on eBay. You may also find one at your local pawn shop. Older versions and the TI-83 require 4 AAA batteries. If you can turn the calculator on and see the cursor blinking, the calculator is probably just fine. If there are lines or bruises in the LCD screen, then do not purchase. The not-so-fancy version of the modern TI-84 can be found at an office supply store or Walmart or Target. The most recent edition of the TI-84 that graphs in color has its own rechargeable battery, rechargeable through a USB cable. Teachers should have their own copy of the text. There is not a teacher edition of the textbook. I am teaching this with a graphing calculator, and you will need a graphing calculator if you are following along my video presentations. You may not need the set 3 exercises unless you get a student who's just too dependent on looking at the answers in the back of the book. I actually use them most often for examples to show students how to do the set 2 problems. So, you are going to be an instructor for this book, but you've not taught this book. Or perhaps you have a math or science background and are wading into working with homeschoolers. You're the good guide, but you've not done this before. You're really the person for whom I have created video supplements. This is 27 years of teaching from this book. All I want my students to see or review following the presentation of the lesson from the book. About 10 years ago, the educational community decided it was imperative for students going to college to have had calculus before graduation. That means that algebra had to be taught in the 8th grade. Since every student was going to be going to college, that meant every 8th grader needed to be taking algebra. I have been beating this particular drum a lot in the last 10 years. Do not rush algebra. The idea of substituting a letter for a concrete amount requires a cognitive maturity that happens typically sometime between the child's 13th and 16th year. About 20% of kids are ready for algebra in the 8th grade. Another 60% are ready in the 9th grade. The rest need more time. If they are not getting 80% or better on the tests, then either slow them down or drop them back. Needing calculus in order to get into those top-drawer universities is an elitist wish. I recently had an accidental contact with one of my former students from the community college. She had dropped out of school in the 9th grade. As an adult, she came back to try again. She proceeded to blow the top off all of her classes at the community college, earned a fat scholarship for 2 more years at a 4-year university, and got her master's degree in science paid for as well. Older students are always better students. Wait until they are ready. And yes, there are scholarships for these folks, and other ways to get college paid for as well. Welcome aboard. I'm excited to be walking with you into this adventure. There is a beautiful world out there that will astonish you when you see it written in math. There are problems to be solved that can help make people thrive and flourish. You might be the author of that invention that changes the world.